Okay, let's set the scene. It's February 9th, 2026. And for the last, 30 years, we've all been operating under this one big idea that countries that are tied together by trade, well, they just don't go to war with each other. It'd be too expensive, right? That global markets would be the ultimate peacemaker. Well, today, that theory, it's officially dead. What we're watching unfold right now is something we're calling the Great Divorce.
And the thing that really kicked this all off, it was this bombshell statement from Russia's longtime foreign minister, Sergey Lavrov. Now you gotta understand, these weren't just some off-the-cuff remarks. This wasn't just frustration boiling over. No, this was the sound of a door slamming shut on an entire era. And it's a sound that sent shockwaves all the way from Washington to Beijing, basically shattering whatever was left of that post-Cold War optimism.
So let's be clear about what we mean by the Great Divorce. This isn't just a clever name we came up with. It's the definitive end of an era. It's that moment when everyone finally had to admit that all those economic ties we thought would hold the world together, they've snapped. And let me be really clear here. This has grown way beyond just the war in Ukraine. This is about a fundamental redrawing of the entire global map. Yeah, you could say Lavrov's words were like a wrecking ball. They were aimed right at the foundations of, well, everything. All the diplomatic and economic relationships built up over decades. This wasn't just him criticizing the West, it was a formal declaration. He was saying that bridge connecting Russia to the Western economy, it's gone, we've demolished it. So let's dig into why. So Lavrov laid out exactly what Russia sees as the problem. He called them artificial obstacles. But from Moscow's point of view, these aren't just policies. They see this stuff as straight-up economic warfare. I mean, think about it. The West seizes $300 billion in Russian assets. To Russia, that's not just a slap on the wrist. It's a message to the rest of the world that your money isn't safe if it's in dollars. And when the US pushes back against the BRICS group, Russia doesn't see that as healthy competition. They see it as America trying to keep its grip on the world's financial system.
And this is the really crucial part. For years, the whole strategy behind sanctions was pretty simple. Squeeze Russia's economy hard enough that they have no choice but to come back to the negotiating table. But what Lavrov is saying now is, what table? He's saying that table has been burned to the ground, that the trust you need for any kind of real partnership, it's gone. And from their perspective, it's never coming back. So the big question is this just bluster, or is the reality just as bad as he's painting it?
Well, you know what they say. If you really want the truth about what's going on in a country, don't listen to the speeches, look at the spreadsheets. And right now, the story the numbers are telling about Russia, well, it's pretty grim. And we're not talking about propaganda here. This is the hard, cold data coming straight from the International Monetary Fund. So that brings us to the multi-billion-dollar question, right? After all these sanctions, after this huge shift away from the West, is Russia's economy actually crumbling? Is this great divorce completely ruining them? The answer, well, it comes down to one tiny but incredibly important number.
0.8%. That's it. That's the IMF's latest growth forecast for Russia in 2026. Now, technically that's not a recession, but let's be real. For a country trying to fund a massive, all-consuming war, it might as well be. It is the definition of stagnation. It's just enough to keep the lights on, but nowhere near enough to really project power or, win.
And just to put that number into perspective for you, the US is expected to grow at about 2.1%. China, a pretty healthy 4.5%. Russia, at 0.8, is just getting left in the dust. So, no, this isn't that quick, catastrophic collapse that some people in the West were hoping for back in 2022. But what it is a long, slow economic suffocation. It basically puts a hard ceiling on everything Russia wants to do.
And what's crazy is that this is all happening even with Russia's big pivot to the east. I mean, on paper, it looks like a success, right? They're selling tons of oil and gas to China and India, but when you look closer, the reality is a lot messier. They're forced to sell that oil at huge discounts, and worse, they're getting paid in currencies like the Indian rupee that they can't easily turn around and spend on the high-tech stuff they desperately need for their military. So what you end up with is this picture of a fortress economy. It's not collapsing, it's stable. It can survive, but it can't grow. It's an entire national economy that's been retooled for one thing and one thing only: survival. And that creates this really dangerous situation, this paradox. Russia is now a country that feels it absolutely cannot afford to lose this war, but it also can't really afford to win it quickly. They are stuck in this brutal, grinding war of attrition, not just on the battlefield, but in their bank accounts too.
All right, so while the economists are staring at their spreadsheets, let's shift gears. The world's diplomats all turn their attention to, of all places, the desert oasis of Abu Dhabi. And for a hot second, it looked like there might actually be a glimmer of hope. You know, a possible way out of this whole mess, with the UAE playing mediator.
And, you know, the official statements coming out of these talks were all very positive. They used words like constructive. They even capped it off with a prisoner swap, calling it a goodwill gesture. It was the perfect kind of headline, really, designed to make everyone think, hey, maybe they're actually making progress.
But the reality on the ground told a completely different story, a much more brutal story. While the diplomats are talking about goodwill, Russian missiles are slamming into Kyiv and Kharkiv. And on the one issue that actually matters, the land, they made zero progress. None. Ukraine, for obvious reasons, refuses to give up the 20% of this country that Russia is occupying, and Russia has literally written that territory into its own constitution. So the gap between them is not a crack, it's a canyon. It's basically diplomacy by fire.
Okay, so if diplomacy is a dead end and the economy is stuck in neutral, what is Russia's endgame here? What's the grand strategy? Well, it's to try and reshape the entire global financial system. This isn't just a military conflict anymore, folks. We have entered a full-blown financial Cold War. What we're seeing emerge are two totally competing systems. On one side, you've got the Western system, right? Led by the US, built on the power of the dollar and tools like the SWIFT banking system. On the other side, you have this alternative being built by the BRICS nations, led by China and Russia. Their tools are things like BRICS Pay, trading in their own local currencies, and Russia's sales pitch to the rest of the world, to the global south, is brutally simple and effective. Hey, look what the West did to our $300 billion. Don't think for a second they won't do it to you too. They're literally weaponizing their own isolation.
But just when you think you've got it figured out, here comes the wild card, the X factor. Reports are swirling about a 20-point peace plan that President Zelensky has apparently taken directly to Donald Trump. It's a huge gamble, really. From what we're hearing, it's about getting some kind of security guarantee that isn't NATO, figuring out who pays the staggering $500 billion reconstruction bill, and, this is key, offering the West access to Ukraine's huge reserves of lithium and natural gas in exchange for that protection.
And this is why someone like Lavrov is so gloomy about the future. Because any deal with Trump, a Trump deal, has to be sold as a big win for America. And what does a win look like? It almost certainly means demanding things that are politically impossible for Putin to agree to, like a full withdrawal of Russian troops. So for the Kremlin, they're looking at this and thinking a Trump deal might end up being just as tough as a Biden deal, just with a different salesman.
So, where does all this leave us? When you take a step back and look at all the pieces, the diplomacy that's gone nowhere, the economy that's flatlining, the absolute destruction of trust, the picture you get is, well, it's of a new and much more difficult era. It feels like we're heading into a long winter for global cooperation. So if you're trying to make sense of the world right now in February 2026, it really boils down to three things. Number one, diplomacy, at least the way we used to know it, has failed. The two sides are just in different universes. Number two, Russia's economy is now locked in survival mode. It's not about growth anymore. It's about fueling a forever war. And finally, number three, that bridge of globalization, the one we all believed would keep the peace, it's been completely and utterly demolished.
I think the best way to describe this new reality is competitive coexistence. Look, countries will still have to deal with each other. Trade will still happen, but it'll be through middlemen in places like Turkey or the UAE. They'll still swap prisoners in fancy hotels. But that deeper connection, the trust, the integration, that whole idea of a shared bright future that Lavrov talked about, that's gone.
And all of this leaves us with the biggest, most important question of all. Because eventually, this war will end. But what kind of world will be waiting for us on the other side? A world split into competing financial blocks? A world of countries stuck in survival mode, where trust is a thing of the past? What's actually going to be left standing when all the smoke from this great divorce finally clears?